Ready, you can start now.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Si Jiaqian, and my student number is 114767. And today I will talk about an important intercultural issue, which is the language barriers and communication in multicultural settings. I think intercultural settings, I think my multicultural settings is very useful, especially when we are now living and studying in New Zealand. And intercultural communication also happens when people from different cultures and languages who talk and share ideas, values, and informations. So today, our world is very connected, and so people often study and work with others from different countries and places like universities and workplaces. Because people we speak different languages and we have different cultural background, so sometimes communication become very difficult. Language differences can also lead misunderstandings, confusion, and communication problems. So in this presentation, I will try to explain how language barriers affect communication and decision making. And I will also connect to my personal experiences as a international student work and study in New Zealand. And the second part is the introduction part. So in intercultural communication, it's very important today because we from different cultures and we meet and communicate with each other is more often and more frequently due to the globalization, migration, and international education. However, these communication and interactions can sometimes be very difficult for to us when we have different language skills or different ways of communicating. Language barriers can make people speak less in discussions and create misunderstandings and affect our teamwork of decision making. And in my assignment, research also shows that good communication is very important for successful teamwork in multicultural. And intercultural issue and language barriers. Language barriers happen when people speak different languages or when someone communicates in a second language that they are still learning. And research shows that these barriers can affect how people understand messages, share their ideas, and understand cultural meanings during conversations. And in multicultural settings like New Zealand, people often communicate in English, even if it is not our first language. And because of this, people with different levels of language ability or skills may communicate more slowly and feel less of confidence when they speak in discussion or communication. So understanding language barriers exist is very important for us because this can also affect our teamwork, our participation, and the overall success of the whole communication. And the intercultural issue and personal decision making analysis. And in this part, I will try to explain the intercultural communications, how this can affect my personal decision making in different situations. I will talk about several important areas of intercultural communications, and these include cultural influences on perception, communication barriers, and nonverbal communication, language difficulties, and business communication in multicultural workplaces. And I'll also compare ideas from academic research in my assignment with my own experiences. And cultural influence on perception. I think culture plays an important role in how people negotiate, communicate, and with each other and in social interactions. And research also shows that people comes from different background may try to explain or understand the same thing in a very different way. So, because the each culture that we comes from is very different from each other and the same as the social expectations. For example, in I found that in New Zealand, this kind of Western culture is more encourage us to discuss in a very public way and very direct way. However, in some Asian cultures, like where I come from, China, we are more focused on indirect communication and more in a gentle way, like in a more harmony way. So when I first arrived to in New Zealand, I sometimes don't dare to ask questions, or when my lecturer ask questions, I would choose to hesitate to observe how others would um, answer the question. But now I understand the difference between the two different cultures. I think understand this also helped me to change the way I was thinking and change the way how I participate in classroom and how I performance in my workplaces. And the barriers to intercultural communication. There are many barriers that can affect intercultural communication, like language differences and unfamiliar communication styles and stereotypes, and also like not knowing the social rules of another culture. And research also shows that international students often feel very nervous when they're speaking in a second language. And this can also reduce their participation or influence their performance in the discussions. And I also experienced similar problems at my workplaces. Like in my part-time job, sometimes customer tends to speak very fast and also use some local expressions like Kiwi slangs that was very kind of difficult for me to understand. So at first, I did not want to ask the questions because I want to make the whole service more fluent, and I don't want to cause any troubles. I was avoid misunderstandings. But this experience also have taught me that asking for clarification and listening carefully also plays a very important role in intercultural communication. And the next part is nonverbal communication. And nonverbal communication is also very important when people from different cultures communicate. And nonverbal communication includes gestures and facial expressions, eye contact, and like body languages. Those signals can also show meaning even when spoke language is not clear. Like, however, sometimes these signals can also have different meanings in different cultures. For example, making eye contact is often seen as a signal of confidence in New Zealand and some Western society. But the same eye contact, these signals can also be seen as disrespectful in some different countries. So when I first came to New Zealand, I tried to avoid eye contact, but now I already learned how to use these signals when I try to communicate with my customers or classmates. So I think watching these signals helps me understand their need, helps me to understand my friends or customers or classmates, their needs and respond them correctly. And next part is language as a barrier. Language differences are one of the biggest challenge in intercultural communication. Many international students find it very difficult to understand different accents or slang or informal expressions used by native speakers. These difficulties can make students feel less confident and speak less in discussions. I sometimes needed more time to understand what my friends were saying when we were in a party or meeting. And because of this, I learned a new strategy, which is I learned to listen more carefully. And sometimes I will repeat their like last sentence as one of the strategy. And I personally do think this helps. And but now, as my English improved, I slowly became more confident and started sharing my ideas when I in a intercultural communications settings. And next part is business communication in multicultural context. I think communication is very important in multicultural workplaces. And some research also shows that successful teamwork in international environment needs cultural awareness and clear communication and mutual understanding. And in workplaces where English is used as a common language, people who are not native speakers may sometimes feel very struggling. And like in my part-time job, I communicate with my customers or my coworkers who comes from different countries and different cultural background. Sometimes I also don't feel very confident. And as I said, mentioned that in those situations, I tend to repeat the most important informations or some keyword, or by using some simple and also polite language to confirm their requests. And this also helps a lot. And the next part is reflective exploration of intercultural viewpoints. In this section, I will reflect on how different intercultural ideas influence my communication behavior and decision making. And culture and I also learned some cultural theories and some cultural frameworks that can help explain why people from different cultures communicate in very different ways and react very differently in certain situations. And the first is dimension of the culture. And in this part, I learned that one important theory for understanding cultural differences in Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory. This theory explains how cultural values influence communication and influence behavior and decision making in very different societies. For example, in New Zealand usually has lower power distance, which means teachers and students we can communicate more equally and more open discussion is encouraged in classrooms. And in contrast, Chinese culture tends to more focus on hierarchy or focus on respect for or not. And because of these cultural differences, so I first felt very comfortable asking questions in class because I thought it might be disrespectful based on my personal experience. However, after learning more about the communication styles in New Zealand classrooms, now I slowly became more comfortable sharing my ideas and dare to asking questions during discussions. And next part is dominant and alternative cultural patterns. Every culture and society has dominant communication patterns that can influence how people interact in daily life. In New Zealand, communication is usually tends to be a very clear and very direct way. This pattern could encourage people to participate in discussions and in communications. So I found it difficult to respond very quickly during the classroom debate or discussion or any communication settings because I need more time to think in English. But later I have improved my ways of thinking, and I improved by preparing my ideas before discussions. And at the time, societies also have alternative culture communication styles. For example, in New Zealand, Maori communication traditions often focus on storytelling, group discussion, and strong community relationships. For example, like I was doing my internship in one of the kindergarten in New Zealand, I noticed that they often invite Maori and different kids, their parents, to join our classroom, and we communicate with each other. This is very different from the from China that I came from, and learning about these communication traditions helped me understand that there is not only one correct way of to communicate, and this also helped me to become more open-minded while I interacting with people from different cultural background. And the next part is contact between cultures and acculturation. Globalization and international education have increased the contact between different cultures. This creates opportunities for people who to learn from each other and grow personally. And my experience studying and working in New Zealand includes many interactions with people from different cultures. In many situations, I need to decide whether to ask questions for clarification or try to understand them, meaning from the situation by myself. And over the time, these experiences have helped me become more confident. And this process is also, I think this process is also called acculturation because for me, I first this acculturation is meaning is where people adapt to a new culture while still keeping part of their original culture. So these processes, I have also improved my communication skills that while still valuing the culture traditions that I learned and I gained in China. And last part is cultures within cultures and identity. This is another very important idea in intercultural communication, is that cultures are not all the same. Even in one culture, there are many different culture groups with different communication styles. These differences can be based on profession, age, and education or different social background. During my time in New Zealand, I noticed that communication styles are very different in universities and workplaces. For example, in our classroom, discussions are included debate and critical thinking. And my workplace's communication focus on more on teamwork and more on efficiency. So my identity as a international student also influenced how I communicate with the different groups. So when I talk with my Chinese friends, I feel like communication is more easier because we share the same culture and we share the same cultural background values. But when I talk with locals, like some Kiwi friends, I focus more on clear English communication and fluency. So understanding these differences also helped me change my communication style and interact better in multicultural environments. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sejia. Just that is the reasonably a good inclusion of the contents and just giving good examples onto your the reflection. Just taking some very just I mean practical examples from yourself and your experiences through to showcase your understanding the way how you have explained that it is good. Just only this thing is the way that you have delivered the presentation. It is quite difficult to get the evidence of just since it is not physically we are doing face to face. The way how what I felt is it's quite a reading of your pre-prepared material. Instead, if you could have talked to the audience lively, explaining in your own words the way what you have understood those concepts, the theories and your examples, that is much better, right? Just in the future I'm expecting that kind of a more live presentation skill than quite the pre-prepared notes through. Right. Anyway, I have to ask a question from your Sejia. There you were talking about the aquaculture, just in relevant to the term what you have learned as the acculturation. Just how do you explain it to me for a host community or the host culture, how they can change slightly to focus into the minority groups to adapt to their culture?
You mean for some minority groups, how they can adopt to their culture in the domain culture?
Yeah, just from the main culture, what are the flexibilities or what the what is the possibility into adapt into the main or the host culture? Just a slightly for the just basically the changes. What sort of changes that you recommend the minority group can be adapt to it?
Personally think for the minority groups, the most important thing is always be open-minded, and you should also be very you should also learn to interact and join the the domain cultures to experience the difference between the two culture. That because for example um for example, one of my friends, she is from a Fiji island, and I think in New Zealand, Fiji Island is not a domain culture, and in my previous classroom, and she always tends to bring her own very special dresses and show them in the classroom, even though that some professors mentioned that is kind of not appropriate and not the right occasion to show that. But for me, I think it is very good to insist on the minority groups to insist that their individual culture, but also it is also very important to be open-minded and learn how to join to adapt to the main culture of the society.
Good example you have bringing. Just it shows that you understand the concept and what's the acculturation and just basically what the adaptation from where the adaptation should begin in terms of when especially the new individual moves from a different country, how they are going to begin the adaptation. Just that is the way what you have explained. It gives me an idea you have the right understanding on that. Perfect. Thank you very much, Sajid. Now it's the time to Rodrigo for you to ask the question.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry for the noise here in the background. So, Sergio, you mentioned that when you were adapting to New Zealand culture, you also try to capture a little bit of the Chinese identity. And how do you balance exactly these two cultures when you are conversating with someone or when you are in an intercultural background or situation?
It's so for me, New Zealand culture and Chinese identity, it's not about to choose one from out of the two. I think it's more of like how to expand my personal skills. So for me, I also choose to learn my some of my Chinese cultures specialties, like we do value politeness and do value the respectiveness. So and I also learned to adapt some very New Zealand ways of communicate, like be more directive and be more clarity, and be more clear. And I also learned that for example, if I have very different opinions with each other, I would first listen more politely. And I also learned as a the Kiwis way to express more clearly. Like, for example, like I understand your view, but I have different view, to show that I also can be very confident to show and express my personal thought instead of be in silence like I used to.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope, Rodrigo, you are happy with the answer received?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, all good,
Makes sense.
right. Thank you very much. Just perfect. Thank you very much, Seja. Appreciate your attempt. Okay, we'll stop recording now and move to the next one.